on page 304, we get to box 8.4, and we read about a particular cue that doesn't actually influence our first pass through understanding a sentence, even though we assume it probably would, and that's prosody. Prosody is the way that a person speaks, their rhythm, their stress, their intonation, the way that the sentence is being emphasized. And we would assume that, like, in some of these garden path sentences, I'm sure you noticed, it feels like there's a comma missing. Like maybe there should be a comma or a pause somewhere to signify that that part of the sentence is referring to the noun phrase, even though it's not clear in the sentence. Perhaps that could be made clearer by adding a comma or a pause or some emphasis on some word, something like that. We would think that when hearing a sentence rather than reading a sentence, that we would be able to hear from the speaker's intonation, from their stress, from the way they emphasize things in the sentence. We think that we would be able to hear some information about garden path sentences that would allow us to process it faster and easier than we do when we read them on paper. But the research suggests that that's not actually the case. That when people were recruited into the laboratory to read garden path sentences to individuals, that they didn't read them differently when they were ambiguous versus when they were unambiguous. That the stress and the intonation sounded the same, and that individuals who were hearing the sentences didn't do any better. They didn't do any better on auditory sentences than they would have done on written sentences, suggesting that these that prosody or that stress and the intonation aren't actually influencing our first pass guess at how a sentence should be processed. Now, sometimes these cues, these prosody cues, can influence how we process a sentence, but mostly in the studies that have been done, it required an actor to come in and that the actor be specifically told to influence the other participant of the study, to specifically influence how they understand the sentence, or they were specifically told to give cues to allow an individual to perform well on a certain task and stuff like that. Anyway, so it suggests that sometimes we can use prosody, but we don't use it hardly as much as we think we do, and it doesn't influence our processing of sentences with any kind of regularity or reliability.